Remember that they keep working on Brian Mbeumo, so I know you keep hearing a lot of things from Javi Guerra to Calvert-Lewin to many other things. Guys, Man United focus in this moment of the transfer window is to close the deal for Brian Mbeumo, because they want him, because Ruben Amorim wants him, but also because the player is waiting for them, and so to respect the player and try to get it done as soon as possible. Man United are on it, so the conversation remains underway, but that's the point for Manchester United at the moment. Of course, on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who left Everton as a free agent and is now available for several clubs. Reports about Manchester United. Well, guys, what happened with Calvert-Lewin is that the player has been offered to Manchester United. It's not Man United that started negotiations for Calvert-Lewin as new striker. The player has been offered as an opportunity on a free transfer, a cheap opportunity for a player who has experience, knows the league, and can be helpful for any club. So Man United registered the eventual cost of the deal. It means obviously the salary, the commission, the intention of the player, who will be obviously very open and excited to join Manchester United eventually in this summer transfer window, but at the moment is not yet a concrete negotiation. It's not something that Manchester United are doing today or tomorrow. Manchester United will assess their options for the striker position, will consider all the possibilities they have for the striker position, and then they will decide. Calvert-Lewin is an option being offered to the club, but it's not something that they are doing right now. So that's the point.
Let's talk about Manchester United now. And before we discuss the outgoings at the club, let's get the latest on the one potential big incoming. Dharmesh, Brian Mbeumo, any closer to becoming a Manchester United player? What's the latest? This one's been rumbling on a while.
This is becoming a saga, isn't it? I think we've spoken about Mbeumo on every single podcast episode so far in this transfer window. And here we are again. Not a done deal yet. Hasn't moved on dramatically since we last spoke, because if I remember correctly, when we last spoke, they had a second bid that was rejected by Brentford, which was worth around £62.5 million, 55 initial payments, £7.5 million in performance-related add-ons, a total fee, which coincidentally is the same amount that Manchester United paid Wolves for Matheus Cunha. I think there is still an expectation that this one will happen. I think it is now a case of just trying to get not only to the overall fee, which is not, I'm told, a huge distance away, because we think that Brentford want around £65 million, but it is the structure and how much of that is paid up front. So even though Manchester United's second bid only falls around £2.5 million short of that £65 million mark, I think Brentford would want a great deal more than the £55 million that would be guaranteed, and the rest of it to be in achievable performance-related add-ons. So those talks have been ongoing. They will continue, but there is an expectation that at some point Mbeumo will become a Manchester United player.
Dharmesh has just dropped another transfer lingo, a new one. Achievable add-ons is a phrase I'm hearing more and more these days. They used to just be called add-ons. Now they're achievable add-ons, and in some cases, difficult to achieve add-ons.
Yes.
It's fantastic, the way the language continues to evolve.
Yeah, I don't know whether United had requested that another £2 million would be paid if Brian Mbeumo was holding the Ballon d'Or on the moon, which is which could be classed as a difficult add-on to achieve.
Just quickly before I get Sam's thoughts on Manchester United, Marcus Rashford, of course, is being linked with Barcelona. So I don't know why I laughed there. But we spoke earlier about Barcelona missing out on Nico Williams at Athletic Bilbao. Does this pave the way for Rashford to make the move to the Nou Camp? I mean, for me, it's the most unlikely transfer ever, but the whispers and murmurs don't seem to go away.
I mean, he definitely wants to go to Barcelona.
Does he? Oh,
I don't think that's a secret. I don't think that's a secret. I think he wanted to go there in January, but that one didn't work out. He got that move to Aston Villa. I think Aston Villa really went for it. Sam will probably attest to that by bringing in Asensio and Rashford, not only for their Champions League campaign for the rest of the season, but potentially to try and qualify for the Champions League the following season. Hasn't worked out. Those two players have gone back to their clubs. United have said to Rashford and 4 other players in Antony, Alejandro Garnacho, Jadon Sancho and Tyrell Malacia, don't come back to pre-season when everyone else does. We're going to give you a slight delay so that you can sort out your future. It's been intimated that these 5 players have asked to leave Manchester United, whereas I think there's been a little bit of pushback from various players' camps, whereas they're almost intimating, well, we're not part of Ruben Amorim's plans. Well, whichever way you look at it, I think the end result for all parties has to be the same. These players have to leave Manchester United, but that is easier said than done, because you've got a situation with Marcus Rashford, who will command a transfer fee of around £40 million plus hefty wages as well. So us simply saying, right, the Nico Williams deal hasn't worked out, does that mean it makes it easier for the Rashford deal to happen? I wouldn't say necessarily easier, because Barcelona will probably encounter the same problems that they have done with Nico Williams. So there's going to have to be a lot of negotiation here, not only with the transfer fee, but perhaps also with the wages that Marcus Rashford is on. Is he going to have to take a pay cut? Is he willing to take a pay cut? Is it going to be a permanent deal, which United would prefer, or are they going to have to entertain another loan deal like they did with Aston Villa in January? It's not an ideal situation. And you know what? A question that I was asked as well, with this news coming out that these 5 players have been given extra leave, does that weaken United's bargaining position in a way, simply because buying clubs will know that they are desperate to get these players off their books? But like I've said before, you know what? Manchester United at some point are probably thinking, we're just going to have to take the hit and start again, rather like Arsenal did with a number of their players that they didn't want at the club, notably Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. And now look at Arsenal. They turned things around. They're regularly challenging for the title. Yes, I know rival fans will take the mick and say, you know, they're second again. But the fact that they're second again would suggest that they are challenging for that title.
Sam, Rashford to Barca, what do you reckon?
Well, financials aside, which Dharmesh covered there, and I'm equally sceptical as to whether or not this can even be financially viable. In terms of playing perspective, it's a more fun way of looking at it. There is a pretty key consideration here, which is that most Man United fans will tell you that Marcus Rashford isn't renowned for voraciously hard work off the ball. I think at Villa, he did actually buck up and he did put the effort in. But with Rashford and the peaks and troughs of his career, you can never really tell which status of Marcus Rashford is the permanent one. And you never know when sort of 4 great months might turn into 4 bad months. So it's really hard to trust whether or not that's his new style, or if that was just a bit of, a fresh start, a bit of energy. And if he were to go to Barcelona, they are probably the most aggressive pressing team at the elite level of football. So to play for Hansi Flick, you have to run your socks off. Is Marcus Rashford willing to do that? And will he do it consistently? Those would be the questions. Because from an on-the-ball talent perspective, obviously he is good enough to play for Barcelona. But will he muck in and do the defensive work on a consistent basis and keep his manager happy? That is the key question.
Another one of the Manchester United's problem children, if we could call that, with regards to this sort of group of players they're trying to sell. Jadon Sancho could be on his way to Europe, Dharmesh. Lots of talk about Juventus. That one, is that more further along than any move for Marcus Rashford at the moment?
Not necessarily. I don't think so, no. I mean, Juventus have held what's been described to me as positive talks with Manchester United and with Jadon Sancho's representatives. We think that the price that it would take would be around £25 million, which is what I think the option price was, or the obligation price was for Chelsea when they took him on loan, and then ended up paying a £5 million penalty because they didn't take up that obligation. But again, the wages could prove to be an issue. And Chelsea did want to keep Jadon Sancho. And what broke down in that deal wasn't anything to do with the transfer fee. They were willing to pay that. Is they couldn't come to an agreement on a renegotiation of the contract terms he was at Manchester United, hence why he's come back to United, and hence why United are now giving him a bit of extra time to sort out his future. Juventus like the player, but it should be said here that we think that their priority at the moment is still Francisco Conceição. He arrived on a season-long loan last summer. Stayed on for a little while longer and played in the Club World Cup as well. There is a 30 million euro release clause in his contract, which Porto want paid in full up front, which is why there is a bit of a stumbling block between Juventus trying to get this deal done and not. So they're trying to negotiate on that release clause, number one, and maybe negotiate on the structure of the payment as well. However, because that one has not stalled, but it's proving a little bit difficult, it's in Juventus's interests to see if there are alternatives. And at the moment, it feels like Jadon Sancho is number one alternative rather than being the first choice at Juventus. That's not to say that talks haven't been productive, because every information that I've got on this is that they have. However, against the backdrop of all of this, they are still trying to do that deal with Porto and Conceição.
Is Juventus a good fit for him, Sam? Will he rejuvenate his career in Italy, do you think?
I think from a personal level for him, going to Serie A would be really good. I don't like to paint in too broader strokes here, but on the whole, the pace of the game in Italy is slower and the quality of the defending is lower. So for a man who needs a pick-me-up, who needs a rejuvenation season, needs to find a bit of confidence, effectively stepping down the level here. Italian fans won't appreciate me saying that, but I believe it's true. Would be great for him. So if they can get the deal done, I'm sure he'd be